No one knew why, least of all the house. It was a perfectly lovely house. All the women with diamonds in their ears and on their fingers, and hair that was blonde except for the quarter inch where it grew out of their heads, said so. Sturdy construction. They don't build them like this anymore, insisted the men in suits that whispered when they walked, and hair stiff with product and drenched in cologne that made the dust sneeze. But the people who came to look at the house always found faults. Water in the basement, though only a little, and only when it rained very hard. Scratches in the hardwood floors that would mean refinishing, though the scratches had been made by much beloved dogs and one very large rabbit over 200 years. New windows, New windows needed despite the fact only a couple stuck or leaked. The possibility of lead paint beneath generations of new colors, ugly cabinets remarked upon by women wearing hideous dresses, a postage stamp yard that was city standard and the suburbs easily accessible provided it wasn't between 6 in the morning and 10 at night on a weekday or during hockey or baseball season. On and on and on, always latching onto the house's faults and never noticing the intricate crown molding or the lovingly restored vintage stove or the period hardware on all the doors, the built-ins in the front room or the nook at the top of the stairs that was perfect for a squashy armchair and a lamp and a favorite book. Visitors became fewer and further between, and then there were none. The green box that hung from the door handle, from which the overly made up women and men took the key with which to let people in, was removed, and then, for an even longer time, no one came at all. The house resigned itself to living out the remainder of its years in solitude, no voices echoing in the hallways, no wondrous smells wafting from its kitchen, no squashy chair in the nook at the top of the stairs. And so the house was surprised when, one day, the girl was standing inside the front door, a drab army surplus duffel draped over one shoulder, decorated with brightly colored patches that made all sorts of declarations and featured very exciting anthropomorphic creatures or women wielding various weapons. The girl cradled a black cat in one arm, a box of books under the other. She set the books down first and then the cat, who sallied bravely forth to explore shaded corners and wage war against the army of dustballs that had gathered in the absence of the troop of women who had, before the house had been abandoned, come once a week in their pink car with their robot servants and sprays and mops and harsh but lovely Russian to make the house spotless. The house was certain the door had not opened, but how then had the girl found her way inside? There had been brownies and fairies and all other sorts of creatures once, but they had gone back to the old world long ago, where people still left the remains of dinner and sweets and bowls of milk, and with them had gone the folk with the ability to walk through unprotected thresholds without using keys and doorknobs. Thus, the house concluded, the girl must have used the door. Where had she gotten the key? Perhaps she'd picked the lock. Yes, that was it. She must have picked the lock. She was an intruder. But the house found it did not much care for how she'd gotten inside, only that she was here, and it once more had a purpose. What do you think, Panther? The girl asked the cat when it returned to curl around her legs, rubbing dust on her jeans. This house has good bones, the cat said. They don't make them like this anymore. The girl nodded. I think it's a perfectly lovely house. She tilted her head to one side as though listening for something she expected to hear, or for something she could almost hear. House, she said, and the house startled, knocking an ancient empty picture frame off the wall. Panther and I are wondering if we might live here for a while. Would that be all right? The house exhaled a sigh of relief, and Panther nodded. The house says yes. The first thing the girl did after she chose her bedroom, and Panther chose his, was to disappear for an hour. The house worried and fretted until she returned, pulling a wagon. In the wagon was a squashy armchair, blue with white stripes. The material was sateen, the seat cushion and the bit where someone's head would rest a little shinier than the rest, well worn and well loved. Also in the wagon was a matching ottoman with a charming skirt. The house watched as the girl dragged them up the stairs and put them in the nook. When she went back downstairs, the wagon was gone. She must have put it back outside when I wasn't looking, the house thought. Where did it come from? I don't have a wagon, do I? Perhaps I do. It has been a long time since I did an inventory. Oh, house, you ordered groceries while we were gone. Thank you, the girl said, checking the pantry and the cabinets and the refrigerator. You got everything I like. She began to pull out various things and explored the rest of the shelves and drawers for knives and pots and pans. I did do a good job, the house congratulated itself, even if I don't remember doing it. Good smells drifted out of the kitchen: bacon and cheese and toasted bread, vanilla cake and chocolate frosting, apples, nectarines, and plums, tomatoes and basil, and sharp, tangy vinegar. A feast. But only the girl and the cat to eat it, and the cat couldn't have any of the cake because chocolate was bad for cats. The house had heard that somewhere before, from someone important. Oh, the girl said, I found some tuna. Do you want some of this, Panther? With mayo and pickles, please, the cat said politely. The house was not used to polite cats. The girl mixed the tuna to Panther's specifications and carried the bowl and the platter with the bacon, grilled cheeses into the living room, setting them on the floor. She went back for the plate of tomatoes and basil with vinegar and the cake, then a pitcher of lemonade and a pitcher of water. When she returned from her last trip, the ghost arrived. The house had never been haunted before. It wasn't sure how it felt about being haunted. The ghost brought a chill with them, frosting the inside of the windows, except for the leaky ones, with ice crystals, setting the ancient floorboards creaking. Curls of paint grew heavy with damp and fell to the floor, but they didn't get into the food, so perhaps the danger wasn't so great. Panther noticed them first, as cats often did, sitting back on his hind legs and pawing at seemingly empty air, golden eyes darting from one swirling opalescent form to another. He dropped back to all fours silently, lightly, practically hovering, claws extended, and inched closer to the girl. She scratched between his ears. It's okay, Panther, I see them. Once she said it aloud, the ghost became visible. The spirits belonged to no one the house recognized, though obviously its memory had been playing tricks on it lately, so it forgave itself any lapses. The girl pulled on her hoodie and fingerless gloves and started to make plates of food she then handed to each of the house's new inhabitants. There were definitely, the house decided, new inhabitants. It could tell from the way they could hold the china and silverware, bite the vegetables and bread and meat and cheese, and it disappeared into them and remained there. Not even the lemonade dripped through them. Such small oddities were meaningful. The house thought it remembered people leaving for jobs and school and errands, but it didn't want the girl to concern herself with such trivialities, so it made certain the temperature suited her as best as it could with the ghosts around the place, for her joy at conviviality seemed more important than the need for a second layer. That the water ran and was warm when she needed it to be, that she and Panther and the ghost had the food they liked and the drink they preferred, that the girl had books to read and notebooks to scribble her stories in and electricity to power her laptop and internet, whatever the house thought that was. Everyone was happy until the boy appeared. Unlike the girl, he knocked, or at least a knock sounded, and when the girl opened it, the boy was on the other side. His hair was shaggy and it was raining, so it was also plastered to his skull and neck. Water dropped down inside the collar of his leather jacket and his flannel shirt. His jeans, worn thin at the knees and frayed at the cuffs, held up by a leather belt with a buckle made from a piece of a circuit board, and guitar strings were also soaked through, outlining the muscles of his legs, the bones that composed his knees, and sharp shins. He had the same army surplus bag over his shoulder the girl had had, but his had no patches, no decorations of any kind, not even his name written in black marker. In his other hand, he held a guitar case. Can I come in? The boy asked. The girl remained silent for several minutes, staring at him, blinking occasionally, while the boy got wetter and wetter, so saturated that the droplets began to run off of his hair and his clothes and his skin without even attempting to cling. It's cold, he said, when the wind picked up, bringing a frigid breath of winter, even though it was August. Let me in. Fine, the girl said, but you're not staying. And no guitar, the house thought. The boy crossed the threshold with his wet hair and his wet jeans and coat and his green bag. He set his bag down, blinked, squinted. Where's my guitar? What guitar? The girl asked. Right, the boy said. What guitar? Fucking guitar, Panther snorted. The boy startled. The cat talks? Panther grinned, a surreal opalescent light reflecting off his serrated teeth. Of course the cat talks. Of course the cat talks, the boy said. The ghosts seemed to dislike the boy from the outset. They dropped the temperature in the house lower than their presence would naturally demand, low enough that the water in his hair froze into stiff peaks, and it became difficult for him to remove his clothes due to hard frost. The house was as uncertain as to why the ghost felt it was necessary to torture him so, but was amused nonetheless and watched him shiver as the tips of his fingers and toes and his lips turned dusky blue. All right, that's enough, the girl said eventually, though the sides of her mouth quirked up when she spoke and her voice trembled in the way it did when Panther did something naughty and she was forced to reprimand him, but it was too amused to do so properly. The ghost blew out clouds of cool, shimmering protests and drifted to the floor, surrounding the boy with a tight circle, the girl on the outside. He isn't going to hurt me, she protested. His heart is black, one of the ghosts said. We can see it. It was, the girl said, but everyone deserves a second chance. And a third, and a fourth, another of the ghosts asked. The girl's expression changed, lips turned down, eyes going to her bare feet, the patches of dust over the arch on the right, scratches on the left from her exploration of the artifacts in the attic. But wasn't that weeks ago? Perhaps it was yesterday. This is a different boy. Is it? The third ghost asked. The boy shifted. I'm going to pause real quick and close my window because my neighbor is weed whacking. Sorry. The boy shifted, lengthened just a few millimeters in the legs. His hair lightened to tawny and his skin darkened to hazelnut, his eyes drifting from blue to smoke. His shoulders curled a little, his chin dropped forward. Glasses, square frames that slipped down the slick wet on his face and required him to push them back up as he sniffled and wiped his nose on his sleeve. The unassuming boy was different, at least on the outside. His voice was softer. He requested instead of demanding. He could see the ghosts, and he spoiled the cat, sneaking Panther popcorn and tortilla chips and tuna in oil. And while Panther did not curl up with the boys as he did with the girl, did not groom his hair, did not rest on his shoulder, the cat did not extend his claws when eating the boy's blanket, nor urinate on his belongings as he had been planning to do when this boy had been the other boy. We still do not trust him, the ghost said in the deepest dark of the night, when they met on the stairs or danced to the unused dining room, raising fairy motes and will-o-wisps. His heart is black, they said as they whirled with one another and alone. We have warned her, they said. We cannot make her cast him out. It is not within our purview. Is it within mine? The house wondered and thought about it very hard. The boy vanished. The girl was inconsolable. She cried. She refused to eat no matter what delicacies the house and ghosts brought to her, no matter how many mice Panther brought or how much grooming and cuddling he performed. She began to grow thin, then insubstantial. She began to fade away. The house felt as though its very being would come apart if the girl vanished, and so it thought of the tawny-haired boy with the square glasses, and there he was. The only evidence he had been gone, the emptiness in the girl's eyes, emptiness which took days and days to fill. And then, as soon as it had, he took one of her notebooks. It was an old one from the bottom of the pile. He typed a story from within one on the laptop and sent it via the internet. The house made sure the girl had, and sometime later got an email back saying it had been accepted for publication. The house thought it was odd the boy did not share this news with the girl and spoke with the ghosts, and the ghosts planned a celebration, though they did so with much whispering and many furtive glances the house did not understand. When the girl came down from another exploration of the attic to find vichyssoise and escargot and coca vin and Napoleons and red wine, she laughed for the first time in a very long time. I found this fantastic deco lamp, she said, holding it out, the glass beads on the shade tinkling, but I don't know if it's something that's going to spark a poem. At best, it's worth all of this. Tell her, the ghost whispered. Panther drove his head into the backs of the boy's legs, driving him forward. Yes, boy, tell her. Cornered by shades and a cat, the boy had no choice. I had a story accepted for publication. That's wonderful, the girl said, setting the lamp down and leaping into his arms. He caught her because he had no choice, but set her down quickly, as though to touch her were to set damning fire to his soul. As it should be, the ghost whispered back. Black heart. The boy shuddered. You started the wine without me, didn't you? The girl asked, still beaming. Well, do I get to read it? She sat on a chair that had come from somewhere at some point, and the ghost brought her a glass of wine and the computer. The boy made a grab for the computer, but it rose up far above his head and remained there until he surrendered, moving as far across the room as he could to lurk in the shadows. The laptop dropped directly into the girl's hands and opened. She took a sip of wine while she scanned the screen. The glass dropped from her hand. Fat ruby droplets spattered the floor. They would not come out, the house knew. They never did, even when the floors had been new or newly sealed. This is my story, the girl said. Your ideas, the boy protested. I pulled them together. It's my story, the girl said. You took it from me. I gave you a second chance, and a third, and a fourth, and she set the computer in the chair and balled her fist. Go away, she said. Never come back. He did not have time to protest. He was, very simply, gone. The girl did not mourn this time. She cleaned up the mess as best she could, ate what food would fit in her stomach, cuddled with Panther, said goodnight to the ghosts and to the house, and curled up in her bed. When she did not rise at her normal time in the morning, the house thought perhaps she was tired or contemplative. When she was not, about by lunchtime, it ventured a peek. The girl was gone. The boy had, well and truly, taken her story from her, and she was gone. Without the girl to keep them company, to feed them little bits of life, the ghost soon disappeared. It was only the house and the cat named Panther. Time passed. Windows shattered with the force of weather and tree branches. Sun-baked wood and concrete. Birds needed nests and raccoons needed den. And one day, the house was gone as well. And all that was left was a cat named Panther.